Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to What's Up Belly Up. I'm your host, Mike Brown. The co-host finally made an appearance tonight. It's Zach Mag. Zach, you're back with us after a week off. How was everything last week?
Dude, doing well. Glad to see the show survived without me.
A few technical difficulties.
I was worried. Yeah, you started off a little rough, which had me even more worried. But y'all recovered nicely. Let me tell you something. When your birthday is on the Super Bowl, nobody gives a shit about your birthday.
Yeah, I mean, my
nobody.
It must have been one of those days that, like, you ever go to an arena or like an outside event and like texting's horrible. It must have just been like that Sunday, like Super Bowl Sunday. There's so many texts going out because you didn't even respond to my text. Like my text wouldn't even go through.
Yeah, man, that must have been what it was. Everyone was just so worried about the Super Bowl and getting all those texts out about the Rams and the Bengals that none of them just hit my bandwidth. But what can you do,
Yeah, but anyways, a lot to talk about. We've had some good conversation as of late. Matthew Stafford goes out and wins one for Detroit. Got to talk a little bit about him, and the Rams win the Super Bowl. Alex Ovechkin, he's got a record here. We're talking a little bit about Sidney Crosby's whiny record. We got some Simmons, Harden trade, just a lot in general, a lot of topics overall across different sports. But before we get into that, how was everything? Like I said, you had some business, last week. Take care of what's been going on in the past week. You've been keeping up. You're the one that always keeps me kind of up to date on the sports topics. You got a good slate this week. Have you been really tuning into a little bit of everything, or just checking the headlines?
Yeah, man, I've been pretty tuned in. Going all the way back to, I know we didn't get to talk last Thursday, but the Pro Bowl, which we'll get to a little bit later. That was nuts. Just couldn't do it, and, we'll get there. But, yeah, man, it was a good week. Dinner went well. Kissed a bunch of babies, signed a bunch of heads, and it went well. But I'm glad to be back here. I'm glad to be talking sports. To answer your question, kind of just grazed some headlines in some places. Obviously, watched the Super Bowl. Actually went down further south in Florida to Bonita Springs for our Florida fans. Watched the Super Bowl down there. That was fun. And been watching hockey. I know we're going to, like you said, we're going to talk about some basketball trades that went on too. So, yeah, man, lots to talk about. Did you see in the Super Bowl LeBron talking to young LeBron?
Yes.
That was wild, I thought. That was wild.
And I saw a lot of memes and jokes coming out, and the last one I saw was, it says, pretty much caption this picture, and they're looking at each other, and it says, if Russell Westbrook ever comes to you and says, I want to play with you, just ignore him. That was like one of the memes that I saw. There's a bunch of people blowing it up, stuff like that. But what's up, Mike? How's everything going? Look at that. He's already commenting the Rams hat that you're rocking there, Zach. Again, for those of you guys who don't tune in every week, we are live on Twitter, YouTube, and Belly Up TV. We got a comment section over on the side. We like to answer comments, people jumping in, throwing comments. We'll throw them up on the show live. So for those of you guys that don't tune in, that's what we do. For those of you that do tune in, appreciate you guys jumping in the comments. But we'll get right into it. But Zach, I'm going to throw you right before. I mean, we'll stick with football. But before we get right into the actual football, we definitely got to talk about the halftime show, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. What did you think?
I thought it was great. I mean, what do you expect from 50 Cent? That people don't realize this has been like 15 years, or something like that. Like, you think the dude's just gonna come out all cut up, and yeah, he looked a little odd upside down, and he killed it. He still did good. I mean, Snoop's still Snoop. M looked great. I mean, just overall in general, and then you got Snoop firing one up right before the show goes off. You see him hiding down there smoking one up. But I mean, that's exactly what you expect. Yep. It's exactly what I expected. It brought me back. It was, we always go over to some family's house for the Super Bowl, and we're in the midst of the winter, so we always fire up the wood stove, watch on the big screen in the garage, and that was like probably the quietest moment of the game. Just everyone just kind of tuned in, and you're like, wait. And I heard all the things about, the NFL came out and said, Dre, don't do this. M, don't do this. Don't take the knee. I'm glad that they did that. That kind of stuck it to the NFL. But yeah, I mean, it's what you expect. It sounded great, everything. I'm not a huge Kendrick Lamar fan, but I mean, whatever. I think he was kind of sprinkled in there, but yeah, there you go. I figured, excuse me, being in LA, they could have just burned one right on stage. But yes, I was excited to see Eminem, and he did not disappoint. I agree with a lot of people, probably top 2, top 3 Super Bowl halftime shows that we've seen, probably at least for our era to see. So how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it was nostalgic for one, and people always underestimate the power of nostalgia on humankind. For some reason, that's one of our biggest weaknesses. It's great to see all those guys. It felt like kind of like a mini concert, and considering the expectations and the time frame that they had, I thought they did a great job. The surprise cameo appearance of 50 Cent was like, he wasn't on the list, so that it has kind of its own concert piece as well, where it's like, oh wow, we didn't expect him. He's here. That's cool. And thought they did well. Thought Mary J. Blige was awesome. The whole thing was, I thought, like you said, top 2. It's really the Janet Jackson one is like the only one that for me like will ever compete with it for like most memorable. Those two. That one always, like, you go Super Bowl halftime, for me it was always like Janet Jackson.
Yeah, always.
Now it's Janet Jackson, and this one I just saw. So I mean.
Yeah, and hey, man, I love me some Justin Timberlake too. I got no shame there, but either way, and this just shows you how big of there we go. 50 Cent ate himself, so he turned into 50 cent piece. He turned into $1 piece. But transitioning into the full game, this shows you how big that halftime show was when you got Evan McPherson, the rookie kicker for the Bengals, standing out there during halftime watching it. It's kind of weird in a big game like that. You think to yourself, yeah, kicker probably doesn't need to be in the locker room. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of planning for them. They go out there and kick the field goal. They know when their time is up. They don't have to really talk about it. But yeah, that just shows the draw that it had. But our guy Matthew Stafford got it done. Great. I'm so excited for him, but I'm so annoyed now because it's like now that he finally won something and he's out of Detroit. There is so much Matthew Stafford slander, and it all started with Richard Sherman and the Hall of Fame talk. And never once did he say anything about the Hall of Fame. This wasn't him. This was our boy Dan Orlovsky talking about it, which Dan hyped, rightfully so. He went on there. He said, he's going to let everybody know, which that's Stafford's boy. They grew up in the with the Lions together, so and they've always been close. So it's great to see him move on. I guess again, before we get into the actual game, I'm gonna fire that question at you. Body of work right now, is Stafford a Hall of Famer?
Right now, no. Right now. I mean, if his career ended right now, I'd say no. I think he's on the path. I always thought, I was in the camp that even when he was in Detroit, that he had Hall of Fame talent. And just Detroit is what it is. We don't have to beat a dead horse with that situation. But I don't think that, there's people are pulling the numbers left and right. You see it all over Twitter and all social media about, is he in the Hall of Fame because, Dan Orlovsky's run his mouth. I think Big Cat was pumping up his old take of Stafford's going to be a Hall of Famer. I think he'll end his career as a Hall of Famer. I wouldn't say he is one right now, but I think he's going to continue to win games in LA, and I don't know. Part of me wants to say he'll win another Super Bowl. I don't know if he will, but I think his talent level is Hall of Fame talent level. And he's got the yards and touchdowns. Those numbers are there. The wins aren't there, which, like we said, is the whole Detroit thing. So if he makes up for that in LA, I think he's good enough. It's dude.
What's crazy is actually his wins and losses, and I never even looked back on his wins and losses because I knew in Detroit it was so bad. But yeah, absolutely. There you go. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm reading a comment here. It says, with Stafford finally winning one, do you guys feel like the Lions failed him even more? I don't know, but before I answer that question, speaking of the Lions, I always knew that his record was horrible, but still, it's and it's still bad, don't get me wrong, but I think after everything, I think he's like 50 something and 70 something, which surprisingly I was like, holy shit, I didn't even realize he won 50 games, So
right, yeah.
he was
With
like
how
20,
miserable Detroit is,
yeah,
you'd expect that to be
20
like
games
20 and something.
below
Yeah.
500, which that's actually pretty good for a Lions quarterback, especially Stafford. But I don't know necessarily that Detroit. Granted, Stafford didn't play with Barry Sanders, but he played with Calvin Johnson. I think that organization failed a lot of players, and probably Stafford is one of the few people that you see the guy, his character. He's not going to be one of those guys. Even when the Lions approached him in the offseason and said, "Hey, it was kind of like a mutual thing. They both agreed, they both agreed to part ways. It was no hard feelings, and I think that was Detroit's way of finally saying, we know we ruined what we had in you. We didn't build around you. So I think that was their way of saying, we know what we did, but we're trying to make it right, where they didn't get a chance to do that with Calvin. They didn't get a chance to do that with, Barry. And even like, remember Ernie Sims, the linebacker out of Florida State that we drafted, that tons of talent. Granted, you're not going to get usually a Super Bowl caliber, one player on that defense you're not going to draft and essentially going to change things. But there's so many people, and I think that's one of the few things that Detroit realizes, hey, we've screwed this up for so many different people. We really respect you. We really want to, have your opportunity. And hey, man, go out and get your shot. And what are the odds that? I mean, could you imagine living his life? His last year, his wife's had brain surgery. He goes from the worst team in the league now to a Super Bowl. He's just going to win a playoff game. He has one of the best playoff runs ever. We're kind of getting far away from the Super Bowl here. You knew we were going to talk about Stafford, but I mean. I agree with you. I don't think his body of work right now is going to say, yeah, you're a Hall of Fame, but give him 4 or 5 more years in LA. And I think his trajectory is there. And honestly, his statistics this year matched up side by side. If you looked at Aaron Rodgers, who had actually an MVP this year, they're not too far off. So do I think he's going to need to win some awards? Probably not. Because I don't see him unless something happens with Aaron Rodgers or those guys. I mean, they're all about the same age. Aaron's probably a little older, but I think he needs to maybe get in another Pro Bowl, because he's really only got 1 Pro Bowl to his resume.
Yeah.
So there's not really any of those things that pad his stats.
Yeah, it hurts him that he's, a quarterback that in his 1 Super Bowl win didn't get MVP.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a bummer for him. But I think it really comes down to whether you think wins and losses is a quarterback stat or you don't. Some people are in one camp, some people are in the other. And, obviously Calvin Johnson's a Hall of Famer, and so his record's not being held against him. He played his whole career in Detroit, so his record's no good. It really comes into what camp I think you're in on that when you're looking at his numbers.
I agree. I agree, though. Excuse me. I think that 4 or 5 more years, even if he has, I wouldn't say subpar, because subpar for him is still a pretty good season. I think even if he has some good seasons the next 4 years, I think he'll get in just based off of statistics alone. I know they want to see your body of work. They want to see your hardware and stuff like that. And some people say, hey, man, that's a kind of slander to the people that are in it now. So, yeah. But yeah, the question was, when with Stafford finally win one, do you guys feel the Lions failed him even more? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I wanted to, because that was my biggest take after he won the Super Bowl. And I'm texting my brother and my dad, and I'm like, this ought to, and I don't know if you saw like the specific markets, and maybe it wasn't accurate, but it was like some beat reporter on Twitter said that Detroit was the second most tuned in, like, specific market.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
behind Cincinnati. Cincinnati was number 1. And it's just like, I sent that to them, and I'm like, this ought to make the Fords absolutely ashamed of what they have failed to give their fans. Like, they love Stafford so much after he's gone to a different team.
They followed him across country.
Yeah, and we saw it all over the place. Like, Detroit's pulling for LA. We saw the Detroit Rams stuff being sold in stores. It was very clear that Detroit was rooting for Stafford in this game. And to me, that should just be an eye-opener to the Fords. Like, y'all are failing us fans, because we're so faithful. And we'll follow this guy to another team when he goes to a Super Bowl. Like, that's how much we love these guys, and you can't produce wins for us. They ought to be ashamed of themselves, I think. And I've been preaching that they need to sell this team, and they'll never be good until they sell the team, because I don't think they're dedicated to giving their fans what they deserve.
Yeah, and I think the Sheila Ford right now that owns the Lions, I think she means well, but I think she's in over her head, because I think she surrounded herself with, like, Chris Spielman and different people that she's doing what she needs to do. but I think it's so far gone, and that legacy is so tainted that I get it. I mean, it's hard to give up a franchise that you're ownership of, but when you've got that much bad, I don't know, juju within an organization, I mean, it's just and I know it's Ford Field, and there's a lot to go behind it, but
I'm over it, dude. I don't care what we call it. Call it anything but Ford Field. If it gives us wins, at this point, I don't care.
So then moving on to the actual game, how did you feel about the game? Was it? We talked about the playoffs, one of the greatest playoffs we've ever seen. Did it fulfill your expectations? And was the game better than the commercials?
I thought the game was better than the commercials.
I did too. Usually the other way around.
Yeah, I thought the commercials were lackluster this year. But the game was. I don't know. I mean, we're always talking about refs in these games, and there were some calls that were missed, but that's and I know that's what people want to make this topic about, did they help the Rams? Did they help the Bengals? It's just refs are going to miss calls. That's just the way it is. That's just what we have to expect until it's any better. It's what we expect out of the NFL. So, the controversy around the face masks that come out and say it wasn't a tug or whatever. And then you've got the pass interference calls at the end. I still thought it was a good game. I thought the Rams were the better team.
Yeah.
And I thought more so than the score showed, I thought the Bengals got the beneficiary of some points, but I think also, the Rams got some good calls at the end, which you had a good tweet about, always feeling like we were in the game with Stafford. As long as we were within a possession, we always thought we could win the game in the fourth quarter. And you said you were glad the rest of the world got to see that on the big stage because it's what he did at the end. And maybe that was why he got the calls, because that's what he's known for. I don't know, but I thought the game was good. I think it could have been officiated better. Obviously, I think everybody thinks that, but
yeah, I think a lot of ups and downs. And actually, to tell you the truth, the Bengals were on a lot of kind of both sides throughout the playoffs. We saw a touchdown taken away against Oakland, that inapparent whistle, some out of bounds. Obviously, they scored in the Super Bowl, a pretty blatant face mask. Then obviously they kind of got that call where, depending on how you're looking at it, that their linebacker pass interference over the middle. I mean, that could have been a great call. A lot of those are boom boom. But yeah, either way, and we actually talked about this early when we were talking about playoffs and stuff. And I said, the Bengals, they're not going to make the Super Bowl, but they're going to be a team that's young and they're going to be around for a while. And, they definitely overperformed this year. They played against a great team. They hung in there with them. Really excited to see, it's kind of hard to expect them to come back next year, especially with, Burrow taking 70 sacks this year. I think that's the most in the NFL, most in NFL history. There's always that debate whether they should have took Penny Sewell that the Lions ended up getting, or Jamar Chase. Regardless, I mean, one player is not going to shore up that offensive line, and then they got an absolute stud in Jamar Chase. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this year in the draft, but young team, tons of talent. Really excited to see them. Where
I think if they improve their O-line, I would expect them back in the Super Bowl soon, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would definitely think within the next 4 years they should at least. I mean, this nucleus, this core being so young, I could see, if they shore up that line 2 out of the 4 years, I could see that. Yeah. If not, definitely one time. But I mean, you're talking, like I said, a team that peaked. It's funny because, excuse me, on one side you've got this young team that had no business being there this year, and then you got this older team of superstars that was all in 1 year. That now we're talking Aaron Donald, we're talking about a couple other guys that may retire. Obviously that's early. I can't see Donald really retiring, but you got two total opposite ends of the spectrum. So yeah, tell that to Marino. But yeah, it's going to be crazy how it works out. But yeah, we'll see how it shakes down. But overall, a great game. Very disappointed in the commercials. The halftime show was great. The actual game was great. It was cool to see the Bengals and our Detroit Rams playing it. And
well, hey, what'd you think before we move on from that? What'd you think about Stafford's sidearm pass that everyone's like
no
seeing
look
on Twitter now that we've been seeing for 10 years. Like,
well, yeah,
he did that at least a dozen times.
Everyone, when Patrick Mahomes came out and did that stuff, I'm like, dude, I've been watching that for the past 5 years. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, people get to see Stafford. I'm not saying he's the greatest thing ever, but now one season he won a Super Bowl, and now they're saying that like Stafford could be the best quarterback. Depending on what happens with Aaron Rodgers, there's a good chance he can get traded to the AFC. But they're saying if Aaron Rodgers gets traded to the AFC, that Stafford's like the best quarterback in the NFC. Like obviously Tom Brady's gone. So.
Yeah, I think he's like. I mean, with these retirements, I think he's like top 3 oldest quarterbacks in the league too.
Yeah, and he's
starting quarterbacks.
But yeah, I mean, I was just so used to it. Like the camera angle that you see live, like behind him, you see the shoulder angle, but you kind of see him looking him off, and you kind of know what he's doing. But it was like us. That was almost like, as a Lions fan, like we were spoiled. We had this. That's why I said we were never.
That's the only way we got completions.
Yes. No matter. Yeah. We couldn't create separation. So he just created it by looking him off. But no, I mean, we saw this for years and years and years. And again, we're never saying that he's the greatest thing ever. But yeah, when he was with Calvin, he could just literally fire it up there. And between the two of them and how talented they are, it made things interesting. And even when we were at our worst, he made everyone around him better, and there was always an opportunity to win. So seeing that it wasn't shocking, but again, I'm glad other people finally got to see that. But it's like, again, now that he was on that platform, I feel like some people are now like, oh yeah, like, oh, he won a championship, Hall of Fame. Like, I don't want to hear that shit. Like, nobody's saying that, I mean, Orlovsky, I get it. He's hyped for his boy.
Detroit boy, yeah.
But I mean, nobody's saying that, and Stafford would be the last one to come out and say that. But anyways, we got to keep things moving, man. We're pretty happy. We're pretty prideful in Stafford here. But when did we ever think that the Detroit Lions would have that pick, that pick 32 in the NFL draft?
Yeah, right.
It's kind of a neat thing. But yeah, on the flip side, we do have pick number 2. So it's hard to believe. We didn't win no championship, but we're sitting in that championship first round draft pick. So.
That's why that's the epitome of why it sucks to be a Detroit fan, because even when something goes good for you, like Stafford winning the Super Bowl, which like
you get the
not even on our team,
the worst first round pick.
Yeah, the trade off for it is getting the last pick in the first round as compensation.
So what's funny is you talked about Cooper Kupp. You put him on the agenda today, and I just read a thing today. I actually saw a YouTube video of him after his last high school game, and they were pretty much talking to him saying, you played your last high school game. You probably played your last game of football. How does it feel that you're just going to go into the real world? What's your plan? And he was just talking like, yeah, he appreciated high school. He wants an opportunity to play at a college level, but he didn't really think he'd ever get it. And now we're sitting here, and he's the MVP, got it over Stafford, which rightfully so. I mean, he had one of the best seasons by a wide receiver ever. But don't get me started about that one extra game that everybody's going to have from now on for all these records. That's going to just chat my ass. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, Cooper Kupp, unrecruited Super Bowl MVP. What you think about him? And one of the greatest seasons ever. Can he live up to even close to the hype next year?
I think at this point, I have to believe that Cooper Kupp's, able to do whatever he wants to put his mind. He reminds me of Julian Edelman. He's just going to work as hard as he can to make it in the league. And the amount of effort that he puts to make it in the league just so happens to be good enough to be like one of the best in the league.
And him and Stafford have a great rapport.
Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone but me, but just the way you explained him coming out of high school, like every single one of us had somebody like that on our high school football team. Every single one of them. Hey, a wide receiver who was probably not the strongest. It was probably his last high school game. He wanted a chance to play in college, yada, yada, blah, 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 the whole story. And Cooper Kupp just outworked every single one of our buddies in high school that also was trying to do the same thing,
So awesome to see. And I don't necessarily know that he'll ever have a season like that, but a full season with him and Stafford under their belt, obviously won a championship, bearing that they both stay healthy. You can see, I mean, literally, you listen to Stafford's interview, and he pretty much said that McVay told him, you and Cooper get it done. Like, he literally just said, I'll draw up the plays that essentially will be based around you two and get it done. And you literally saw, there were probably some forced throws, but that's what Stafford does. He forces it into a window that usually only his receiver can get. And look exactly what happened. They drove right down the field. It's just crazy to believe, because that's exactly, again, not reverting back to Detroit, but take Calvin off the field and certain things. Like, there was a lot of situations that were forced. I can remember, I think, against the Bengals at one point. Obviously, everyone knows about the jump ball in the end zone against 4 Dallas Cowboy wide receivers. DBs. The things that they would force to make happen because they knew, and the chemistry that they had together was great. So I would love to see, actually, if Calvin reached out to Stafford and what he had to say to him, because he's always a pretty humble guy. I know he's had some disappointments in Detroit, and things are not well between him and the organization. But you can't not love Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. You're right, though. Calvin was probably like, "Yo, get up out of there."
So before we get into the next sport, we'll stay with the NFL. We go from one of the best games to probably one of the worst games ever, the NFL Pro Bowl. Obviously, we're a few weeks out of that right now. We're just getting together since Zach was off last week. Did you watch any of this? Was it worth watching? I'll tell you right now, I had about 5 minutes of it on, and I was just like, holy crap. And I just literally went on Twitter and just watched players just rip it to shreds.
Yeah, dude. I'm so glad you said that, because I only threw it on this. I know it was 2 weeks ago, but we didn't get to meet last week, and I wanted to talk to you about it. I literally did the same thing. I turned it on for 5 minutes, and then I literally was like, you know what? People's reactions to us on Twitter are probably better than this game right now. Yeah. So I was like, I'm shutting this off. I'm going on Twitter, and I'm just going to watch what people say about it. It was terrible. I don't know. They need to do something else. Like, because I totally understand why they don't want to go full contact, right? You risk injury. It's not a real game. It doesn't matter. But if that's going to be the case, then do figure something else out, because that was unwatchable. Yeah. Unwatchable.
So, yes, they definitely got to figure something out. We won't talk a whole lot about that. But like I said, going from one of the best playoffs, Super Bowl, and then this measly Pro Bowl, they definitely got to figure something out. I think the skills challenge, they're getting it there. That was kind of cool. I think the NHL and the NBA have always done that kind of stuff. The NHL does a lot of fun stuff. Cool. But speaking of NHL, if anybody lived under a rock the past couple weeks or past couple years, you got 2 guys in the NHL that have actually are probably kind of getting towards the end of their careers. You got Alex Ovechkin, and then you got Sid. Do we call him the Kid Crosby anymore? Do people still call him that? Both setting records. Ovechkin, which I was talking to you or before we got on, swapping out the hat right there. Yeah, for the Belly Up TV viewers, Zach swapping out the hat there. Alex Ovechkin records 16th 30-goal season. That's second most all time. And I was talking to Zach. I said, how many seasons he played? And we think 17. And he had 29 goals last season because of COVID. So technically, that's where he lost that straight record, essentially, in 17 seasons. But you got a guy like that still playing. And, we can talk about Lemieux and even Yager, still playing for a long time. But at the level in the NHL, Ovechkin's playing. How much more do you think he has in the tank, and does he have a chance at any all-time real goal scoring records? I know that I've seen it broke down the past couple years, but what's your take on that?
I think he's got years left in the tank. Like, I almost want to be super optimistic about it and say he's got like 5-6 years left in the tank. I think he's super good about keeping good care of his body. And the thing that, like, he's going to retire as the greatest goal scorer of all time, right? Yes. And I will debate anybody about this, because even as Gretzky who played for a long time, but as he got older and the NHL evolved, his goal numbers went down. Yeah. And as Ovechkin's gotten older, and obviously the NHL evolves, it does that every year. 30 goals every year. That's it. I don't know if people realize like how hard that is to do. And to not be injured in those seasons is like, dude's just a machine. He's just a scoring machine. And, I'm not going to sit here and say he's the best overall player that's ever played in the NHL, right? I mean, he's strictly a goal scorer, but I do think, and I will die on this hill, he is the best goal scorer of all time in the NHL.
And with that being said, Gretzky, not that it mattered, but Gretzky popped around for a few teams here and there. Is there a real chance that Ovechkin, essentially sets his record with one team his entire career?
That's another insane thing too about it is that, Mike Gardner did 17 straight seasons of 30 goals, but I don't believe they were all with one team. And I don't think he did 16 in a row with one team. I think the 16 is the most with one team. And then obviously Gretzky, who most goals all time, played for two different franchises. I think Gordie Howe is still ahead of Ovechkin. And I believe he played all of No, maybe he didn't play all of his games with Detroit. I might be wrong about that.
I don't even know, to tell you the truth. That's bad to say.
But nonetheless, the fact that it's all with one team is also impressive. Won a cup in the meantime. I just, it's crazy because we talk about these guys like Patrick Kane, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, and these are all around playmakers. And so sometimes the guys like Steven Stamkos here in Tampa, who kind of got hindered by some injuries, but Ovechkin didn't and ended up, being just that strictly goal scorer. I think they get forgotten, and it's a shame because dude just puts the puck in the net. And at the end of the day, that's what wins you games.
Absolutely. So then, obviously, speaking of injuries, though, we've got one guy that has probably had some more injuries, but he still scored his 500th goal. Sidney Crosby, I think he's probably, again, yes, there we go, swap it out. Get the Pittsburgh hat on there for those belly up TV viewers there. Sid Crosby, 500 goals. I think he was he's been hit by the injury bug here and there, missed more time here and there. Do you think? I know he's still younger, and we're actually, tell you the truth, another guy that's been with one franchise since he came into the league, 500 goals. It's crazy to lump these two guys towards the end of their careers, and we talk about the young guns that are coming up. Even Detroit doesn't necessarily, I don't think, have the scorers like this, but there's a lot of young talent there. There's a lot of young talent. Obviously, we've talked about the Oilers several times. But is this kind of like, this is all happening now? Ovechkin, both Ovechkin and Crosby are going to have some years left between the two of them, obviously. But is this like we're kind of getting to that point where there's like that changing of the guard where these older guys they're still dominating, but you still got these young guns that are now in the league, proven. I know, like I said, we've talked about it, and even Matthews and all those guys in Toronto and stuff like that. Is there a guy? And I know we've talked briefly. Is there a guy that, I know we're talking years and years advance, that maybe you could look that would fill that void or essentially be that next face of the NHL, or is there already a guy that is being spoken of? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point because with football, we just went through it. You got the Mannings, the Breeze, the Brady, the Roethlisberger, and you get that changing of the guard where now you got, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, all these young guys that are about to take over the league. And same thing in the NHL. These guys, Ovechkin and Crosby are on the tail end of their career. Granted, they got some years left, like you said, but going forward, it's going to be a different NHL. It's going to be a much quicker paced, heavily relying on skill as opposed to enforcing as it was back in the day. But yeah, it's going to be Connor McDavid. Obviously, I think Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon in Colorado, and even Dylan Larkin is having a hell of a year this year.
Yeah.
Scored his 26th goal today. That's ahead of McDavid. I think he's 6th in the league. Still a young guy. He's got just as many assists as he has goals. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how we talk about these guys. We've got it here. Probably comment says probably McDavid, McKinnon, Matthews, and Barkov's close to ghost guys. Barkov's good too. Young guy. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And there's going to be even younger guys still coming up. Yeah. Rookies in Detroit, rookie in Anaheim, Zegras, Jeannot in Nashville, playing great. And Red Wings got I don't want to get this like too heavy into Detroit, but we got some rookies coming in next year too that are going to be wild.
Well, hey, excuse me again. Like I said, we've got time, and we always touch on hockey, but hockey's your baby, and I like. We're both Red Wings guys. You're more into the sport overall. You appreciate individual players, different accomplishments. But Detroit, that's what I'm saying too. Detroit's had their run. We had our run in baseball, we had a run in basketball, we had a run in hockey. Hockey kind of started it. Since then, we've pretty much fallen off the pace. Now I think we're finally getting to that point where the Pistons, they got some young talent, but they still need a lot to build on. The Lions, yeah, we got one season where we thought we were going to be, and now we're going to build. We need some more talent. But the Red Wings, I think, are finally getting to the point where they've got a lot of young talent, and they've got more young talent. It's like they're kind of reloading, and they're going to all get it together. I'm not saying, that they're going to go out there and things are going to happen right away, but what do you think about these young guys coming in and the young guys that they have and how they're going to mesh? And like you said, this is almost like basketball too, the bad boys, the comparison of LeBron and MJ, it's hard to say that these kids could have played back then when there was enforcers, but the game's totally different. It's very finesse driven. There's totally different. So you have to have that different. You don't have these 6'5" enforcers anymore. These are all little skilled guys. So, the Larkins and even, the last few draft picks we've had. So how do you feel looking up, Stevie and all those guys, CBY and all those guys have really done for the organization? We were excited. We talked about that. We were excited when he first came in, to kind of right the ship. How do you feel kind of getting away from the whole NHL talk and talking about the Red Wings? How do you feel like the trajectory of the Red Wings is looking?
Dude, I could do a whole podcast on Detroit and what the future holds. We've got Simone Edvinsson, who's been playing in Sweden. Dude is going to be – he's the second coming of Nick Lidstrom, which I don't even know if we mentioned on this podcast that they hired Nick Lidstrom.
We did, briefly when they did. But, yeah, we never even got into it because we were kind of pumped, it's two of the biggest names in our modern era coming together to pretty much come back to their organization and just rebuild it.
Yeah. And with the rookies now, Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider, Moritz Seider, they call him Mo Seider.
Yeah.
Both 1 and 2 in the Calder Rookie of the Year race. With Edvinsson coming in next year and Niederbach and Soderberg, which are two other Swedes, young Swedes that we've got coming in the next year or two. When Edvinsson's on a line with Seider come next year and Larkin's having a career season, like I mentioned earlier, Bertuzzi is playing out of his mind as well. As far as numbers go this season, we're only halfway through.
I said, doesn't he have 29 goals or something? I thought
they're both in the top 15, maybe top 20, but they're both up there in goals, Bertuzzi and Larkin. And, Raymond and Seider adding assists as rookies this early on with those other guys in the pipeline that I mentioned. The Red Wings are going to be scary in a couple years. And I really think there's going to be pressure on Steve Yzerman, and whether it's Blashill or somebody else that he appoints as coach, to be good, because they have drafted the talent, and that talent is showcasing what they're capable of overseas right now. And so it's on Detroit if they can bring that talent and adapt to the NHL.
Would I be right to say, and I really don't know this, because I feel like in free agency, like some of your biggest scorers can be goalkeepers. I don't feel like necessarily there's like the really, really big high drafted goalkeepers. Would that be one thing that not necessarily holding Detroit back, but do you think they need to get a better group of keepers? Are you good with those keepers? Or, I feel like free agency, you can usually pluck players like that, especially if you've got a good nucleus where you're going to be talented to where you can grab one of those older keepers that still have a little bit in the tank that can really propel you to that next level.
Yeah, I think that's what they were hoping to get with Nedeljkovic this year, who is still qualifies as a rookie, I think, because he didn't play enough games last year. So, he's not going to have a shot at the Calder because of how well these rookies are playing this year. But I think they're hoping to get, kind of a diamond in the rough home run hit with Nedeljkovic. He's been playing well. The defense just isn't at an elite level right now to allow him to shine. But I think they're going to have picks to play with in the future. If they want to trade for a high marquee goalie, then they can do that. But you're right. That is the one thing in their pipeline that they're kind of missing is because when it comes down to playoffs, that's if you're a hockey fan, like that's what you need is goaltending. your goalie's got to stay on the head if you're going to win the Stanley Cup. And so I think that's the piece that they're missing right now.
Cool. It's nice to talk a little bit. I don't have the opportunity to really follow. I just tune in. I check the website, and I follow up ESPN. I go to the Red Wings website and kind of tune in here and there. We don't get a lot of hockey out here on the old dish. But yeah, and actually, when I lived closer to Toledo, it was nice because before Bally, obviously there was Fox Sports Detroit, and I could pretty much get anything. Now Bally has just pretty much just ruined everything, So
really,
but yeah, so I can't get that. But anything else in the hockey world that's kind of burning? I know we kind of flew over Crosby. You think between the two of them, Ovi and Crosby, and I know this is probably kind of a stupid subject or stupid question, maybe not. Who do you think plays longer? Or I guess from this point on.
I think Ovechkin.
You really think Ovechkin?
Yeah, I think I think Sid's gonna, now that he's reached this 500 goal plateau, I maybe he could get to 600, maybe, but it would take him, like, his body would have to go through so much, and he's at a point where he's accomplished so much. Multiple gold medals for Team Canada and captain some of those teams. Like, dude has, like, if he feels the least bit tired, like, he's just going to retire. Like, there's nothing else for him to do.
Whatever happened, I know Malkin's still there, but I mean, whatever happened to him, I feel like he just, like, fell off a cliff.
Yeah, he went through some injuries. I mean, he's still there. He won a couple scoring titles. So
yeah,
people forget that. Like,
yeah, I mean, just based off of what he was to now, I mean, I feel like both those guys were pretty beat up in Pittsburgh. So yeah, it's hard to see, but I don't know. That's what I was wondering. I definitely can see where you're coming from as far as Sid. Ovechkin, like you said, those guys are just built differently. Those guys. I mean,
like, Ovechkin just stands on the top of the circle and one-times pucks. Like, you could do that for another 5 years if that's all you do.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. He makes it count. So,
yeah.
Getting out of hockey here, we're going to touch a little on basketball. Simmons Harden trade. Are you just there? You go. Look at rocking the 76ers hat right there for the people at Belly Up TV. So, are you finally glad, relieved? We're not huge basketball guys, obviously. Are you finally glad it's all over? Simmons, Harden, this is all over. That they finally made the move. It's funny, even though Harden was shipped out, Simmons was still a good player, and I totally forget that with this trade, now he's going to play with KD and the rest of those guys. I don't even know if Blake's still there, but I know Kyrie's there when he plays. But yeah, there you go. Spoken like a true Sixer fan there. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, they said. But are you glad this is all over with? I see you got the 76ers hat. Is that your bias of who won the trade, or is that just the hat you snagged?
Yeah, it's just I don't have a Brooklyn Nets hat, so this is what I had to throw on. But yeah, man, I'm glad. I'm glad we don't have to talk about Embiid or Simmons anymore. I think it was always obvious. It was always, you're going to keep Embiid and you're going to do what you can to move Simmons. Obviously Harden's a Harlem Globetrotter at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays for every team in the NBA. But no, I mean, I really don't think it's going to matter. I don't think either of these teams figure it out by the NBA Finals. It's such a toss-up this year. We used to have, like, the super teams, and Boston's playing really well in the East right now. But these teams that you put together with these star guys, your star players as your core this late in the season, I don't think is going to win you a championship. Either way. So I don't know. In the long run, who could have benefit more? I don't know. I think it's funny. Here's the thing. People are hating on Simmons for, like, he was citing mental health issues, and then he goes to Brooklyn and all of a sudden he's back on the court and, he's practicing, and people are like, really, was it mental health issues? Like, you're good like that. And I just want to be like, well, I mean, that's what Philly does to you. I mean, I would get 10 times happier if I moved out of Philly too. It would cure my mental health.
I mean,
right away.
Yeah, but it goes to show you too, like, also with the Harden going to Brooklyn, like when he got there, I think those three players, like, played like a total of like 10 games, like Harden, Kyrie, and KD. Like,
yeah.
like something crazy. But either way, he wanted out. He was okay with being out. It seems like, with Houston, every so often he's just ready to leave. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't know. Look at that. Well, it seems like a personal attack. the Philly there. But yeah, it's crazy. But before we get out of basketball, I saw a crazy stat that I wanted to throw, or not a crazy stat. There's talk about Zion missing the rest of the season this year. I didn't see exactly what it was. And they said that, the reason that it caught my attention is because if Zion misses the season, does he go down as one of the biggest busts in NBA history?
I forgot he was in the league, dude.
And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I looked, and I think it was like 3 games. If Zion misses this season, which they're talking about, I didn't even see what it was or what happened. He has at this point played 85 games. And I think that's
he's played 85 games
in his first 3 seasons.
I would have given him half that. I didn't know he played 85 games.
You know who he's only played 3 more games ahead of that is considered one of the biggest busts in NBA history? And no, it's not Darko. Is Greg Oden. They're comparing him to essentially Greg Oden because Greg Oden only played 82 games, and that's the comparison that they're going with. So I got to look a little more into it. I just saw it quickly. But it's crazy to think, you kind of, you talk about Morant. Obviously, you left Memphis not too long ago. Seeing him kind of flourish right now, and you totally forget about Zion. And hopefully we'll be able to say the same thing about Cade Cunningham. Like, he was the number 1 overall pick, but they were talking about Jalen Green going to Houston, and it looks like Cade's, the more season number 1 pick, the better pick. But it's crazy to take a talent like Zion, once in a generational talent, that he was like the next LeBron James, essentially, is what it was.
Yep.
And now here we are talking that he could potentially be one of the biggest busts just because he can't stay healthy, not because he's not talented. But with that being said, speaking of LeBron James and the LA Lakers, does it? And I know you're not checking the box score every day, you're not looking at that, but does it put a smile on your face seeing how much that team is struggling and how much they can't figure it out in LA?
Yeah, I checked the standings the other day. I saw I think they're 9th in the West right now. It doesn't. I mean, it does and it doesn't. I always root for LeBron to succeed because his career's gonna be over. I feel like I say this all the time. His career's gonna be over, and we're gonna wish we had more of him.
Yeah.
And so I always want to see him succeed. But I mean, going back to what you said earlier, like with Brooklyn putting the big 3 together, and they played just a handful of games together, and that was it. And it's like, people will always slam LeBron for trying to put these teams together. Like, he plays GM, with his teams. Yeah. And they don't realize it's not that easy. Like, Brooklyn tried it and they couldn't do it. And Golden State did it. But that still only lasted for so long. And then KD got upset. So it's not as easy as it looks. And I think LeBron's learning that the hard way finally, that, whatever he tried to put together here in LA, it's clearly not working right now.
And I think this is the end of his Lakers career. He doesn't really care. He's just waiting to have the opportunity to play with his son. And then
wherever his son gets drafted, that's where he's going to go sign. I mean,
but enough NBA talk. That was too much for our show already. Before we get out of here, one of the biggest sporting events, spectacles ever is about to take place this upcoming weekend, and that is the Daytona 500. In past, even the casual fan has seen some of the most epic races probably in the past 5 to 10 years. And I think you and I were talking about this, and I think this is one of the few sports that COVID revitalized. That this was going on. There was nothing else going on. And I still think NASCAR's got a ways to go. I think they're doing things right. They had that race the other night at the Coliseum. They're trying, but I think this finally got some eyes, some attention back on the NASCAR. Daytona 500, you're guaranteed to get the big one, that big accident here and there. And I know people, you don't tune in for that. You want everybody, but we saw some crazy things in past years, with Ryan Newman and different things. Do you think, will you tune in to the Daytona 500 this year?
I might. I mean, to be honest with you, I got nothing going on Sunday. So I might. I honestly, I might. And I'll let you know next week on the show. I'm rooting for my boy Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I have no idea if he's even racing, but if he
You like
is,
the mullet?
I'm rooting for him. Yeah. And I think he does. I think he does well on these kind of tracks, if I remember correctly. Because you're right. I tuned into NASCAR during COVID, and then they got in that whole Bubba Wallace deal, which no matter what side of that you're on, like you can't argue that it created partisan in NASCAR that didn't have to be there. Once they were in the spotlight during COVID. So I think that might have some fans that drove them away. I don't know. I don't watch NASCAR anymore because the other sports are back on, and that's just how it works. But I'll still root on Ricky Stenhouse. And next weekend, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after that, the Grand Prix is in St. Petersburg here, which is across the bay. So I'm gonna try and talk the girl into some tickets for that.
There you go. And didn't you make mention the Oilers may be coming to town? You're gonna try to squeak in there.
That's next Wednesday. So when we record next Thursday and when we're live on next Thursday, I will have an update on that. And but yeah, I'm gonna be a little 4-year-old out there with Sharpie in hand when that bus rolls up. Please, because then I'm gonna frame it and I'm gonna put it right here behind me.
There you go. You heard it right there. But so before we get out of here, like we usually do, kind of a little round table, anything burning questions, anything that is just going on in sports that we didn't touch on that you want to throw out there. Do you have this yeah?
I want to mention because it was last night, late, 11 Eastern, Canada played the U.S. in women's hockey for gold. We were trying to repeat as gold. What is that called? Gold champions or I don't know what you call that. Yeah, gold medalists. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. And we couldn't do it. Canada won 3-2. So want to give props to Canada because they're in political turmoil right now. And so at least they can go home with a gold medal for the women's hockey team. That was super late at night, though. I'll be honest, I fell asleep halfway through the game.
Either way, it's good for especially the Canadian men's and USA team pretty much shit in the bed.
Yeah,
it's to see, obviously for women's sports, obviously close to us, the United States and Canada, everything that the women's have to go through to kind of just make their sport more relevant. I wouldn't say it like they need to do more. They shouldn't be doing more. Their organization should be doing more. Different people, which I get. They got the right people in place. They're doing really good things. So it's good for the sport overall. Good to see them. I was on a show last week, the Sane podcast. We talked a little politics. We talked about Rooney Rule. We talked about women's sports. Different things that it's kind of good to see.
That sounds like a rough podcast to navigate the waters.
Honestly, to tell you the truth, it's very unscripted. Like, he just had me on. We talked about Belly Up, and we kind of ran with it. And I'm not a politically driven guy. I'm not a racial driven guy.
That's what makes it tough. You don't know,
and I'll never speak on a subject that I'd never speak like I know something that I don't know. I'm not in these people's shoes, so I can't talk for them. But it was really cool to kind of have that conversation with Andy last week and jump on his show and yeah, we did. We talked about everything. I listened to it today, and I feel pretty good about it because sometimes you can look back on a show like, man, did I really want to get into that? Did I really want to say that?
Yeah, why did I say that? I do that every week.
We weren't. Yeah, we were. I wasn't avoiding anything. We weren't talking about anything outlandish, but just that we feel that we talked again about the Rooney Rule in the NFL and how that can kind of create more attention in women's sports, the things that they have to jump through and the WNBA has not necessarily had the greatest of support, and it's good to see the women's hockey kind of getting that more so. But yeah, and actually to tell you the truth, to kind of go along with that, I was going to reach out to a guest. I still want to do it. There was this minor league baseball player that the other day got on Twitter and essentially said, I just want everybody to know I'm a career minor leaguer. I was drafted by this organization. I play for the Angels now, I believe what it is. And I just want people to know, not because I'm putting them on blast, but there needs to be reform in the minor league baseball because for 16 seasons, I think he makes like $1,000 a month. And he says literally in the off season, there's 6 guys that sleep in a 2-bedroom apartment on air mattresses. And he says that they literally live off of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and different things and I'm not comparing women's sports to minor league men's
play baseball.
Yes, to baseball and how I saw the negotiations again. They had a players meeting with the MLB. It lasted all but 15 minutes because they can't come to an agreement. This just shows how greedy sports are, that these people, are making millions of, which, don't get me wrong, the players deserve their money, especially when owners, treat them and again, I'm not going down that, that whole political, but yeah, talk about minor league baseball. And I'm not comparing it to women's sports, but it's good to see these players kind of taking a stand. He wasn't so much taking a stand; he was referring to saying, "Hey, I've accepted this. I could have got out when I could have got out, but this is what I love." He's like, "I'm just putting it out there that there needs to be changes." So it's crazy to see on different aspects of things where you got these multimillionaires in the men's professional sports, and then even in the minor leagues for men's, that they're really not making a whole lot, And then you got the women's side, so it's crazy. You're gonna see a lot of different things, especially with this negotiation that's all going on. I know you're missing the fact that catchers and pitchers couldn't report to spring training. That just hurts your soul right now.
Dude, I actually want to mention, because all those teams come down here to do spring
training.
Yeah,
actually, tell you the truth, for you, that'd be kind of sweet.
Yeah, and there's 3 of them that do it in Clearwater, and a couple more in St. Petersburg, and then some here in Tampa, some in Lakeland, which is just a couple miles over. And we have some friends that got some tickets to some of the games. So now part of me is kind of hoping that they come to an agreement so I can go to these games, but don't put that live on air.
No, it's funny because my dad and we always used to come down to Lakeland because that's where the Tigers were.
Yeah,
we'd come and watch them. So, but yes. Anyways, enough baseball talk. We've talked a lot of baseball. We talked a lot of NBA, a little more than.
Oh yeah, shout out Brad for filling in last week.
Yes, Brad was a great guest last week from the Pesky Report. Pesky Report. I keep saying Pesky Report. Pesky Report. But what's that?
Isn't it pesky? What did you say? Pesky?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Sorry, back and forth. I was saying Penske Report. Yeah, I kept going back and forth. Anyways, yes, you can tell that the show is coming to an end here. And I would tell you right now, we're still going strong in 2022, and I still feel like I have this cold that I have not got it rid of. I was rocking some Sudafed. I was rocking some steroids. Some antibiotics. Now I got some steroids. So hopefully this will clear her up. So.
Dude, you're gonna be sick for the entire season 3, dude.
It's gonna be miserable, but yeah, you heard it here first. But anyways, appreciate you guys joining us. We will be back next week as well, Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Zach will be with us unless he's got some big famous event he has to be. Since he's moved to Tampa, this guy's he's out on the street signing autographs and stuff like that.
Dude, so many babies want to be kissed. It's unreal.
This is a big guy. Tom Brady retired, and they're calling Zach. So. But anyways, we're out of here. We will see you guys next week. Check us out on Twitter, on YouTube, and bellyup.tv, Roku. I can't say Roku. You point at the old wings back there.
We just wanted to shoot out. Just want to let the people know.
There you go. Watching it in the old office. But anyways, this exit here has been about 5 minutes. So we're out of here. We'll see you guys again next week.
Maybe.
Yeah.